Good evening and welcome to Supper Club TV. You join us at the 12th event at the Sergeant's Mess outside Tower Bridge in Tower London. I have with me Paula Davis, who is our first speaker this evening.
I think I took for my theme tonight what I see as a sort of intersection between risk management systems and the issue of ethical cultures. And I'm very conscious that at least I'm not standing between you and a drink, but I know I'm standing between you and some food, so I won't be too long. But I do want to start with a bit of 17th century philosophy, actually.
We love a bit of philosophy.
Yeah, love a bit of 17th century philosophy, can't beat it. So I'm sure many of you will have come across Thomas Hobbes, who wrote Leviathan. And he wrote about governance and how we should govern ourselves. And basically, Hobbes had an incredibly dim view of humanity. And he really argued that what we need are a lot of social controls in place. Otherwise, and he coined the famous term, otherwise life would be nasty, brutish, and short. And in my 20-odd years in risk and compliance, I have to say that's a view that seems to be shared by most risk and compliance professionals. We seem to have a fairly dim view of humanity and assume that people will, given the opportunity, do the wrong thing. That, to me, seems to lead to us building a lot of compliance and risk management systems that are built on a sort of prevent, detect, and punish kind of model. So our job really is to these people who are bent on doing the wrong thing, really we want to prevent them. If we can't prevent them, we want to catch them. And when we've caught them, we want to punish them. And I think this general approach to the kind of view of humanity and whether people are inclined to do the right or the wrong thing has led really to how we approach our compliance and risk management systems. We've got a lot of very strong controls, we've got a lot of systems in place, and we often, I go into clients and I see what I think of as kind of compliance infrastructure. And that's important, and I know that's important, and I know we have to have evidence to show to the regulator and so on. But I also think if we start to think about some of the issues that we've seen over the years in the world of risk and compliance, I guess my question is, are the controls, is the infrastructure really enough? So I have a few visual aids.
We have to get a disclaimer for this.
Yes.
Usually we don't allow visual
kind
aids.
of compliance and ethics by the numbers. So there's a big number, $1.6 billion, which most of you may recognise. 10 years ago maybe now, still one of the biggest fines ever, which was Siemens. The Siemens bribery and corruption scandal. Absolutely huge, eye-watering amounts of money. And of course the background to that is that, I can guarantee that Siemens will have had in place compliance programs, policies, rules, controls, but also if we look at some history, some background, some culture, what we know about Siemens, they were deeply implicated in the Nazi death camps. They ran factories in death camps using slave labour. And anecdotally what you hear is that after the war, it was basically impossible for them to do business without bribing. And at the time that this scandal came to light, after many, many years of corporate misconduct, it was actually said that really bribery was the de facto business model at Siemens. And in virtually every other respect, they were just fundamentally uncompetitive. So for me, that's a really, a stark example of the interplay of systems, compliance systems, risk management systems, and the impact of corporate culture on that. My next visual aid, this is another interesting set of numbers that some of you might recognise, 54,735. If anyone's got any ideas. Morgan Stanley, another massive corruption scandal that came to light in their Asian business. And In 2012, Morgan Stanley were actually let off the hook by the Department of Justice on the basis that they had such a sound or robust compliance program in place, because they were able to prove that they had trained their Asian employees on FCPA compliance 54 times in the 6 years during which this bribery and corruption had taken place. They were able to show that they had trained Garth Peterson, the executive most implicated in the corruption, 7 times on FCPA compliance, and that Peterson had actually signed to say that he understood and he had seen business conduct guidance around FCPA compliance 35 times. And on this basis, they got a deferred prosecution agreement. Now, to me, that's not evidence of a compliance program that's working. That's evidence of a compliance program that isn't working. And actually, Peterson did go public, and forgive me if I just read what he said. He went on the record saying, what I feel bad about is the government saying that they know they, Morgan Stanley, had this wonderful compliance program, when in fact the government knows that it wasn't getting into people's heads, which is what really matters. You can have programs and emails, but if people just delete them, if people have to do teleconferences, but instead of actually listening, all you have to do is say Garth Peterson's on the phone, and they check the box that says he's complied, and then you either quietly hang up, or you just put your phone aside and you do other work. That was the culture. And you know that's not right, but that's the way it worked. Again, I think this was the system, this was the record, but this was the culture. And again, I think there's really a sort of tension there. My third and final visual aid is, I believe, if Google is right, that is a Rolls-Royce silver spoon. I believe if Google is also right, that at the time of this last scandal, that would have cost about £100,000. And a Rolls-Royce silver spirit is the gift that was given to a middleman in an Indonesian deal conducted by Rolls-Royce to secure the sale of engines to the Indonesian national airline. So, again, I guarantee Rolls-Royce will have a gifts and hospitality policy. They will have had it at that time. People will have probably signed the policy to say they understood it. They may well have had a gifts register. You know, whereas, are you in Indonesia? Is the gift worth more than $25? Almost certainly. And I think this is evidence, once more, of how we get this disconnect, I guess, between culture and systems. So I think my point really is that systems are a necessary but not sufficient condition for compliance in practice. I think it's Peter Drucker that coined the phrase culture eats strategy for breakfast. We've all come across that one. Well, I think culture eats compliance for breakfast too. And that's something that we all have to be aware of. So, you know, unless we get our ethical culture right, I think these problems will continue to happen. Now, of course, the question is how. Systems are relatively easy and straightforward compared to driving culture. And it's not something perhaps that we'll be able to answer in the context of this evening's 10 minutes, but you need to start somewhere, and what I would suggest is, you know, have you ever even measured your ethical culture? Would you be able to say with any kind of certainty what the temperature of the ethical culture in your organisation is? By looking at things like how the espoused values of the organisation match the business practices. How does what we say match with what we actually do? You know, things like what are your middle managers doing